What's up, man?
Good as always. I like the quarter
Good.
zip. Are you doing like a Peyton Manning quarter zip deal? Is that your thing now?
I am. It is a very rainy day out here in Sacramento, so it is definitely a cozy quarter zip kind of a morning.
Nice. Looks good on you.
Appreciate it.
It's funny because I talked to Asante the other day and I said, man, I said I hadn't talked to him in a while. And I said, you look better and better. It's like, do you have any secret, like for any secrets to youth or to just looking, more, you're glowing like now.
No, no secrets.
No, no secrets. No secrets. Just be who you are.
How are you doing,
And you
man?
know what? That actually is a good. You know what? I'm doing good. Things are good. I'm enjoying myself. I'm a new pet owner, so I have a dog that's
Ranger.
I've come to terms with. Yeah, his name's Ranger, and it's interesting. He's a golden retriever, and I was totally against it. So if like there's anyone that's actually listening, that's like, there's no way I'd ever own a pet. Like I totally know where you're coming from because I do not do and well things have changed, but I did not want a pet by any means. I'm like, I could barely handle my kids, no less than a dog. And then on top of that, I've dogs changed my life over the course of the last 3 months. And I've heard studies that if you own a pet, it actually increases your life expectancy by
Yeah,
like
you live
25%
longer.
or something like that. Yeah, you live longer. So between getting yourself a pet and maybe doing daily sauna treatments, you may live forever.
That may be the code. That may be the code.
That may be the go. We could so maybe it's a good sauna company and maybe pet company. If you want to reach out to us for a sponsorship deal, please let us know.
This
So Asante, I want to
DMs
start
are
off
open.
this. Yes, the lines are open. Operators standing by. I want to start this episode off with a really important question, and I didn't pre just so the people like listening. I haven't even I didn't tell Asante what this question was going to be before. I'm going to write about to ask it to him right now. So Asante, I want to ask you a very simple question.
What'd you say?
Who are you?
Who am I? I am Asante Jabari Alfredo Cleveland. That is who I am.
And who else are you?
Like describe me. Like if you would describe you to me, say I want to know who is Asante Cleveland. Who are you? How would you describe yourself?
I would describe myself as a kind, hardworking, resilient, creative person who is just doing the best he can and trying to get better every day.
Nice.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that, or you feel like that sums you up pretty well?
I think I think one thing about who we are, I have now gotten away from mentioning anything I do or done. So I am what I try to the qualities I try to embody. I yeah. There's a lot of stuff. I'm wise. I think I'm funny. I think I'm loving. So yeah. Who are you?
Who are me?
Who am I? You know what? I'm an amazing, big-hearted father, creative, husband, family man, dog owner, slash, just lover of life. And I think I always try to keep things simple. But the reason why I ask that question is I think a lot of times people have a hard time really kind of answering that, like truly like being able to look in the mirror or look in a metaphorical mirror or whatever it is and just really kind of describe who you are. And I think a lot has to do with if you ask yourself this question. I would encourage anyone to ask themselves this question. But it's the interesting part is not so much the question, but the answer and how a person answers it. And a lot of how a person answers it is says a lot about where they are and how they see themselves, right? And I think when you answer, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there, but I think what the good part about it is listening and paying attention to what that answer is, because it says a lot about how you feel about yourself and what you think about yourself and the picture that you paint of yourself. And I think like if you're listening to it, think about like just sit out there, like at some point, ask yourself, who am I? And try to answer that question. and pay attention to what you start with, because I believe that what you start with is primarily what you mostly think of yourself. You're gonna the things that immediately come to mind as far as like who you are as an individual are going to be typically the first things that you say. And if those things aren't the most positive, I think you kind of need to pay attention to those and jot those things down, that you really, how you describe yourself, because I think that's going to give you like something tangible to look at and to work on, as far as like if you feel like you need to improve your identity, who you are and what you're about, and who you are in this life. And I think identity today is such an important thing, because the way we see ourselves either encourages us to do more, or it limits ourselves to do less, or you know what I mean. I had a coaching call recently, and there was a statement, and I'm going to botch it a little bit, but I think the message will stand true, is that you can't outperform the current image that you have of yourself, right? Like if you believe that you're only capable of X, or you're this, and you got to be careful the words you use, the words turn into things. But aside, however you feel of yourself, you're never going to perform, right? That's why, you know, we get it. We talked about it in previous podcasts and talked about things like you really have to. That's why affirmations are really important, is to condition yourself about who you are and what you're capable of, and what you deserve, right? So I think it's so important. Like this, you know, we talk about identity today, and we talk about how it leaks into various different parts of our lives, both personally and professionally. But it's really important to really answer that question. And who are you? And thinking about not so much again the question, but how you answer it, paying attention to what your answer is.
Yeah, it's really important to elevate the perception of yourself, because, like you said, you're only going to get what you think you deserve. And if you have a low perception of yourself, then you're probably not going to get a whole abundance of rewards. But if you elevate that perception and really think highly of yourself, then odds are uh, your rewards in life, the blessings, the way you give back to other people will reflect that. And I think it's important to detach what you do from who you think you are. That's why when I first gave my answer, I had to say that I learned to detach what I do, because there's a period of time that when that question was asked, my response would have been, I'm a football player or I'm an athlete. And that is something that I do, but the tighter and tighter you cling to an identity that's uh, impermanent, once that is no longer what you do, then you lose sense of who you really are, because that was your whole perception about yourself. So, like, once I was no longer a football player, it was a reckoning to figure out, well, I'm something, even though I'm no longer a football player, which I had been for the past 12 years. And it became a journey just to rediscover who I am aside from what I do. So I would encourage everybody to detach from what they do as a part of their identity.
You know what to ask you is, like, while you're talking about this, and I've noticed this, like even in the past, I feel like when it came to speaking about like your football career, like I don't think that's something you really like gravitated towards. I don't think, is it true that maybe like there's a part of it that maybe you just didn't want people to know? And if that's the case, like why do you feel like that was the case?
Yeah, I wasn't braggadocious about what I was doing while I was doing it. And it was more because I wanted people to connect with me aside from the fact that I was in the NFL. And that's why I wouldn't really want to lead with that, because I mean, there are a lot of people that will just attach themselves to you once they know exactly what you do, based on they see it's valuable, it could help elevate their status or whatever. But I felt that if I gave people an opportunity to get to me or get to know me, then it didn't matter if I was also in the NFL. And also, I wasn't balling enough in my own perception to where I needed to brag about it.
Yeah, true. And I don't think you ever came off as the person, even when we first would brag about like their past or their current situation if they were doing something that maybe other people weren't doing. But the fact that you were there is so much more than uh, anyone else, has accomplished. I mean, it's just like the 1% of the 1%, and not that I'm saying that you would go out and brag about it, but it's just like personally, like when you reflect inwards and think about like, man, I've definitely accomplished something that many people.
Yeah, for sure. It is a very small set of people that have reached that rank, but um, you always feel, for me personally, like I've been around a bunch of teammates where they could not wait to let anyone know, like, oh, this is who I am, this is what I do, which good on them. But I felt
Mhm.
like that could potentially attract a lot of disingenuous attention. And when you're in that position, you really want to sift out people that are there because they are genuinely interested in you, as opposed to people who think they can get something from you.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, and I don't think this necessarily applies to professional athletes or celebrities or stuff like that, but it also provides to mostly everybody. I think sometimes some people, if you ever engage in the conversation with someone and they ask, "Hey, so what do you do?" Like, and I rarely, if ever, and we're very similar. Like, I've ever told people that I was a detective or a police officer, because I knew inherently that it came with follow up questions about what I did and stuff that I didn't really want to talk about, you know and I would, but I think there's a time and place for it. And I think I want people to get to know me for who I am, aside from that, right? And I kind of feel like if people don't ask and they just want to know more about me, right? I feel a little bit more comfortable engaging in a conversation. It allows me to be a little bit more transparent with them based on who I am and, and give up more information because and I found it myself is like, it's just hard to really kind of trust strangers and trust people who come up and especially, and this may be a personal thing, they start off by letting say, so what do you do? Like, what do you do for work or whatever it is? And I'm like, I spend probably too much time thinking about what I'm going to say. And I think maybe it's just a trust issue. Maybe it's just I don't feel like, do they really want to know about me? And I think whether you're a professional athlete, police officer, or just working a job where you feel like, oh, I do construction work or whatever, and be like, oh, like, what are they going to want? You know what I mean? Like, I just felt like I didn't want them to prejudge me or make an assumption based on my response, because I think people automatically have a response, whether it be good or bad, especially with people like law enforcement, like what they think of you. Like, why don't you know who I am, or why don't you just like understand who I am, opposed to, you know, personal things.
And doesn't it make you feel a little weird when you meet somebody and they just lead so hard with this is what I do? I just making whatever they're doing so grandiose and just kind of beating you over the head with like, yeah, I do this, I do that, I do that, and it's like, all right, I, I none of that really tells me who you are, and the fact that you're leading with it so heavily, now my antenna's up. Like, remember
Yeah,
when we met that
100%.
race car driver?
Oh my God, yeah. And I still have stories about that. I don't believe it to be true, but that, I'm not going to go into that for this. Yeah, I'm not going into that period. But aside from that, like, yeah, I mean, that's what makes me suspect, right? Like when people lead into it. I literally had this conversation with somebody the other day about like money. Like what people that have money typically don't introduce you by telling you that they're a billionaire or stuff. They don't talk about money really. It's just like it's like you get to know them and then organically you get to learn about what they do professionally and so on. That's why I think I have issues with certain people that post stuff over social media because it's so it's like coming up on Christmas. It's like a Christmas present. Like on the outside, it looks really good, but you don't know what's inside. Like whatever it wraps, it hides, right? So sometimes that hides something else, right? Something else that maybe people don't want you to know, right? They just want to keep the wrapper on from the outside. It looks really great, but I always suspect when people lead with that. And then the flip side to that is that it could be true, like all the stuff that they try to portray about themselves could be 100% true, but it shows you what they value. Just like
Mhm.
your answer to who you are. Like when people come up with that up front, like that's what people value. Like you ever get engaged into a conversation with somebody, and all they do is talk about themselves, what they're doing, who they know, what they're involved in, and all those things. And just by listening, to them, you get a kind of a flavor of who they are, like what's important to them. It could be not necessarily the things they do, but if you peel, it could be just more significant things. They crave significance. They want to tell you who they know, what they've done, where they're going, how much they're spending, what car they drive, where they live, where their kids are going to school, all those different things. And that to me is like a sign. Like that's like if you want to be your own detective, like listen, like really, really listen to what people are saying. And then you're like, wow, they led with that. And they're really kind of like every time I talk to them, they're coming up with this. That must be something that's a trigger for them or something that they need to really feel important and share about. And I just, for me, I just don't do it. I would rather people just to get to know me. Another thing to pay attention to is when is really focus on the people that ask you questions and ask you questions about you. And I found out I get to be more of a conversationalist and more stay more true to who I am by asking questions. People will the right people because it's all about. I tell my kids it's about surrounding yourself with the right people. You can find those right people by asking them questions. You learn a lot about them, and you truly get to know who they are. And you really and they kind of let their guard down because most people are not asking you questions. Most people are telling you what they're doing when they engage in
Yeah.
conversations. This is what I do, blah blah blah. How many people come up to you and say, "So, tell me a little about you. How where are you living right now? Like, what's your situation? What are you really passionate about? What do you like about the things that you do? Like, all those different stuff like that." I'm just throwing some stuff out there, but really pay attention to people that ask you questions, and those are people that are probably more really interested in who you are genuinely.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to really get to know somebody off the bat. That curiosity, and you can tell when someone is genuinely trying to get to know you, as opposed to they may ask you a question because they want to give their answer. They're not really asking to learn more or maybe come up with a follow up like, oh, you said something interesting. Let me learn more about that. They're like, I'm asking you this because I want to tell you my part of that. Or just trying to somehow steer the conversation back to themselves. No, you will make way more genuine connections if you authentically try to get to know somebody, listen to their answer, and really engage in a back and forth conversation. Uh, it, don't be the person who is just listening just to respond, or you're just really not all that engaged in them, you getting to know them. You just want to tell them about you.
Yeah.
And you know what? If you find yourself doing that, just like make a mental note of it. Like just like I said,
Yeah.
make notes of your responses to who you are. Make a mental note of it and just think about, all right, like how can I show it better here? And to be honest with you, I think if people truly want to be liked, and we're going to go into a couple of things in a minute about some stuff that's happening like in the sports space and in like pop culture, but like if you really truly want to be liked, it's not about the things that you're showing people, right? Because I think you get a lot of that, especially on social media. But like, I think if you truly want to be liked, like, ask people questions, be genuine about them, right? And be transparent because listen, there's a lot of people out there that can relate to who you are, right? I think if you're transparent, you let your guard down a little bit to the right people. Like, I think you're really going to find yourself in better relationships. You're going to be a lot less stressed and anxious, and you're not going to find yourself in a lot of like drama BS,
Yeah.
when it comes to being in certain relationships. And you're not gonna have to worry about the headaches because you're gonna be around people who really give a shit. And the people who don't wanna like separate yourself. Like I'll give you a perfect example. I my kids play travel sports. And within the travel sports space, there's a lot of parents who talk about travel sports and talk about kids and talk about kids like they're almost like adults and stuff. And there's parts of those conversations that I just personally don't like. So I separate myself. Like I sit somewhere else at the field, or I just don't engage in that conversation. So when I'm amongst some of the parents and they start that conversation, I immediately change the subject. I mean, so how are you? How's things going? Like, what have you been up to? How's you got any plans for like the holidays? Like, what's going on? Like, even I immediately change. And if the subject goes back, like quick trip to the bathroom, and then before you know it, I'm standing somewhere else. Like, so it's just like that's just the way that I do it because I know that I don't want to get involved in those conversations because those conversations are not like pleasure inducing for me. So yeah, I beat feet and I'm out of there.
Yeah, it's always a bit of a game when you're in a conversation and you're like, okay, I need to get out of this one. We are venturing into a conversation I'm not interested in having. Maybe there's like a group of people and you're like, how can I smoothly exit from this situation?
Dude, I gotta tell you this real. Everyone's had someone like this. I had a friend of mine that used to call him up, right? And when he wanted to get off the phone, he was, hey, listen, I gotta get off this exit real quick. Or someone else. The typical one was, oh, by the way, someone else is calling me. Listen, run. I'm getting this phone call right now. I need to get out of this conversation. If phone, right? And we were in person, like, you know, maybe just checking your watch, like, hey, I got to go pick up this thing, or I got to, you know, it was always, it was a canned statement. It was like the break glass and pull out of the conversation, right? And it was always definitely on the phone. It was always, hey, I got another call coming in. Let me get back to you, or I'll talk to you later. Yeah, no sweat. It's like, I get, it's funny, like, it was that standard conversation statement that they always, I'm like, dude, I even shouted. There's a couple times I'm like, dude, I know you don't have anybody else going out and get on your phone. You just want to get off this conversation and get off this call, right? So, and especially since and I always get pissed about it when they call me. Like they call me, and then they're talking on the phone, and then they want to get out of the conversation. I'm like, you call me to ask me these questions, and now you want to leave? Like, no, you're gonna hear my answer. This is crazy, crazy.
I have a buddy who is. I appreciate how straightforward he is. When he's just done talking, he's like, all right, man, get off my line. I'm about to get off.
Hey, you know what? I appreciate that. Yeah. I appreciate the bluntness of that. And hey, yeah. I get it. And you know what to expect from him. So I'm like, hey, dude, no problem. I get it. See you later. So crazy stuff. So listen, you know, since we're talking about identity, and I know we like to delve into a bunch of different things when it comes to like what's going on in the real world. So I know like we've talked about in previous podcasts about reinventing yourself and trying to figure out like what you do outside of and we've talked about the difficulties with that, like when you've been doing something for so long, trying to figure out like how you restart the engine and identify as something else. And a lot of people really kind of have a hard time doing it. I know in my profession or my previous profession, a lot of guys who would retire and leave the profession would kind of somehow stay within the profession somehow because they didn't want to completely cut the cord. And that had paid, in my personal opinion, I've seen it, played a lot of negative dividends for them. Like if you're someone who feels like you want to reinvent who you are or your identity, like what do you think would be a good way for people to start or to kind of things that maybe they should focus on?
I think the first thing is understanding that you are a project. You are a lifelong project. You are always going to be iterating and improving, and no matter where you are right now, if that's not where you want to continue to be or not who you want to continue to be, you can always change because we are a constant work in progress. So when it comes to changing your identity or creating a new identity for yourself, you have to really get honest about what you value and what's important to you and start taking actions and habits that satisfy and affirm the values that you hold near and dear. And over time, as you continue to walk down that path, that identity will be present in how you show up for yourself, how you show up for other people, and that alignment in your values will show you who you've always been. That will show you your core identity because you are sticking to what you believe in, what's important to you, not necessarily, like I said, just what you're doing in that point in time, what other people think you should be doing. Like once you have fully aligned with your core values, that will bring out your true identity. And with that identity, you can use that information to inform you like what would be a good move for you, what you would like to, uh, how you'd like to develop relationships, how you'd like to show up for people. So I think it all starts with getting aligned with your values.
Yeah, and I also think there's a lot of fear involved with kind of rebirthing yourself, like starting from scratch. Because it's like, especially, after you've transitioned out of something, for a while, it's kind of hard to believe that you have the ability and have the to transition to something that you've always been accustomed to. And I found, at least in my personal experience, that like there's so many different skills that you have now, no matter what job that you've worked, that you could apply to something else, whether it be to start your own business from an entrepreneurial perspective, whether it be to work in a different industry. There's so many different things. And to be honest with you, like I think the society and the workforce itself, uh, if you look at like a job description, like what the requirements are, I need X, Y, and Z. They look for certain specifics for like I need the X amount of experience in this and this and this, and I understand it. But I think they were also limiting yourself, to not keeping an open mind to a lot of people that coming from different industries that can bring a different perspective to, a workplace, a profession, or whatever. And I think, if you for whatever reason, if you ever feel like you need to reinvent yourself or you want to do something different, like you said, the one thing is that stay true to your values, do something that you really love to do, would find yourself wanting to do it and not get paid for it, just because you enjoy it and get excited about it. Because the days of you struggling at this stage, you should definitely make it a point to be like, I want to get into something and build towards something that I don't feel like shit when I wake up on Monday morning and I feel like I have to get behind a desk or do something professional. And if it's
Yeah.
a personal thing, you want to reinvent yourself, like just get out of your comfort zone and try to focus on doing stuff that does makes you uncomfortable. Because comfort's killer, man. It really is. Like, you know, it's a killer. Like we're designed, our as human beings, we're designed to be comfortable and not to be uncomfortable. Right? It's not in our DNA to get uncomfortable, especially today. Like, so you gotta really focus on getting yourself uncomfortable and doing things just like signing up for Toastmasters because you want to be a better speaker, right? Like you're putting yourself in front of people and expressing who you are, just like your experience was. So it's like, yeah, you got yourself uncomfortable and better life.
Yeah. Comfort can turn into complacency real quick. So it is
Mm-hmm.
good to really stretch yourself and expand what you think you can possibly do. We all need challenges to continue to grow and get better. So, yeah, the more you challenge yourself and seek new ways to explore your values and affirm your values, then I think you'll find fulfillment. And once you are more aligned with what you value, the easier will be to block out the noise that you may be getting from other people when you do start to change and people see like, oh, you're doing something different. Why are you doing that? You will be able to
Mm-hmm.
quiet that noise because you know, like, hey, I know this is what's working for me. I know that this is what I'm enjoying. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine. You do whatever you need to do, but it will help you just focus in on what's most important and quiet the noise.
Yeah, it's wise words. It's true. And if you're out there, like definitely, it's definitely not easy. And like you said, it definitely takes a lot of self reflection and some courage and some action, right?
Yeah.
But you just gotta you gotta make a decision and just go out there and do it. Like, but you're not who you are. Like, you know what I mean? You can be whoever you want to be, especially in old age. I think at some point, it's funny. It's like I'll get back to the sports thing real quick. Like everyone's like, the majority of these kids like go to a travel baseball game. Majority of these kids, like some parents, like majority of these kids will not be professional baseball players. They will not play college baseball. They will not whatever. And depending on where you live and how many kids are there and the quality of the I don't know, competition, I guess some kids may not play high school. You know, they may get cut if they're in a sport that cuts. But what I will say is like, you know, I will never say that you can't. I will never tell my kids they can't make it to the level, or whatever it is they want to do, whatever it is they want to do, because that's the catastrophic seed is planted, the seed of you can't or you won't or it's not possible. And at some point, kids right now, my 10-year-old thinks he can do anything and tries to do anything and creates a lot of headaches for me in the process. But he thinks he can do anything. And I'm not going to tell him that he can't because it grows into something that gets out of control. And well, actually, not just gets out of control. I'm going to take that back. Becomes very deep rooted as you get older. Because the older you get and the more that you believe in that, the deeper the roots grow and the harder it is to yank that tree out of the soil, you know, so metaphorically to speak. But like someone plants that seed. It could be another kid. It could be a parent. It could be a coach. It could be a peer. It could be anybody. At some point, we'll plant that seed. Hopefully, we do a good enough job with our kids that we like. They just make sure that seed doesn't take. You know. So,
have you ever caught yourself having to detach from an identity that you felt you had for a long time, like the thought of something I had growing up was like, I'm a bad kid. Like I had to learn to detach from the identity. Did you have anything similar, and what helped you work through it?
So you know what? I think the first thing that immediately comes to mind is I had to detach from this identity I created for myself based on what I was told. I grew up in a very negative environment. I grew up with multiple father figures, right? Because my mom had been remarried a couple different times, and a lot of those father figures were not encouraging by any means. They told me a lot of negative things, and over the course of time, especially as you're a young adult, a young kid, you believe it, right? So I had to detach from the negativity of I was this, like I am this, because for the longest time I thought I am not going to make it, I am a failure, I am not good, I am this, and you carry around that I am statement for a really long time in various situations, and it's like that negative seed about you can't, the I am thing, like you are, like when you've been told something for such a long time, you believe it, you conditioned, and that conditioning is hard to uncondition, especially if you're in the negative, if you're living in that negative environment, right? Because those people are not going to all of a sudden do the opposite and say the opposite things. They're going to continue with the negativity. It just grows and grows and grows and grows, right? And it's really hard when it's been. So one of the things that I've had to do is I've had to re-identify who I am, and I think that's what made me good at my profession, like being able to try to fix things and figure things out. I had to find those things, tangible things in my life that proved those things that were the opposite of what I was originally thinking about myself. Like if I felt like I wasn't a confident individual, I had to shift that I was confident. Like, oh yeah, I was confident in this situation, in this situation, in this situation. I'm not the problem. Like it wasn't my fault. I was told it was my fault forever. Situations like this, I didn't contribute to this. Like if anything, I added value to this. You know what I mean? The story that I'm telling myself, I had to deliberately and constantly try to change the narrative that story was in order for my thought process and behavior to change, because thoughts become things, right? Thoughts become things. If you think that you're this, you become this. You start doing things that are consistent with this. So that's where I really had to work. And it's not a light switch. It's not something you turn on and off once you figure it out. Have a conversation like this. You got to really work at it. But the problem is, the reason why most people don't get there is that they don't work at it. It's hard because the deep rooted problems are it's like you can't solve a problem without, figuring out those underlying foundational things that have been causing the problems. Like you got to figure those things out first. You got to get yourself in a situation where you can be consistent with doing things in small increments. And then once you get better at that, then you can start working on the bigger things. But it all starts with your mind. And we talk about it on this podcast all the time, the mindset and the focus and listen, everybody. I was literally had a conversation recently about our Antonio Gates episode, and through the course of that conversation, talked about like how I failed or how like I feel like I didn't fulfill what I really want, professional basketball player. Like, so no matter what, we all struggle. We all struggle with the way we perceive ourselves and how we identify ourselves. Like, we can, from externally, can identify him as a Hall of Famer, best at his position, amazing athlete. His perspective may be like, yeah, that's all great, but I didn't accomplish the dream that I thought I was going to have. Maybe I didn't live up to certain expectations that were maybe presented to me or I presented myself. So that's where the identity thing is really so important.
Yeah, for sure. It's all about changing your thoughts around it too. And it takes a lot of work. It's not just you sit down for 20 minutes, think about like, oh, okay, I don't want to think about it anymore. It's like, no, it's so deep rooted that you need to put even more time and effort on trying to unlearn the way you thought about yourself, that perception that had been placed on you that you attached to. It takes a lot of work, a lot of awareness, and over time, it'll change because if you want to change your life, you got to first change your thoughts because then your thoughts become your actions become your habits, and your habits become your life. So it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, but with consistency and commitment, like you can unlearn some of those things that don't serve you now at wherever point in your life. They may not have served you as a kid when it was placed on you, but it definitely doesn't serve you as an adult. So you have to take the time and effort to try to break that attachment from that false identity that you still may hold.
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing is that people often spend a lot of time and a lot of money. And I think this is why a lot of people have success selling courses and programs and whatnot, because people look for other people to tell them what to do. And the reality is that I think a lot of it is pretty simple. It's about changing those habits. It's about changing your thoughts. And listen, is it easy? No. Are you going to fail more times than you win? Yes. But like, it's pretty simple. I found like a lot of things when it comes to a lot of things in our life, like our health and our mindset and a bunch of other different things, like the solutions and the ways to get there are pretty simple. Like the blueprint is pretty clear. I think sometimes we make it more complicated and we look for other people to tell us how to get there and to give it to us as opposed to us actually putting in the work, because it's just more that, you want the quick fix, you want the faster, you want to go in the fast lane, and it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, but it's simple but not easy.
Simple but not easy. Well, that's life for you, really. So tell me what life is. Well, it's simple, but it's not easy. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about this because we talked about this the other day and felt like it would be a good topical thing to chat about. Is like this whole Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight that took place on Netflix. So obviously, not to dive into all of it, but it was, in my personal opinion, as a historical fan of boxing, especially Mike Tyson in his prime, and just as someone who was intrigued, I thought it was a complete waste of time and a failure. But I will say that Mike Tyson and Jake Paul are brilliant. More specifically, Jake Paul, master marketer. I heard Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports talk about this, how this was a complete con, but he is hands down the most amazing influencer slash marketer that out there right now. Brilliant. Like, honestly, like I'm not surprised that it turned out to be the way it turned out. And there was so many different things that came as far as like next ability to produce a high quality video for people to watch. The stream sucked because it was constantly buffering, all that jazz. I mean, stuff that's probably already been talked about on social media and in the news. I do want to say, like, this, talking from an identity perspective, like, I was thinking about like this: is Jake Paul truly a boxer, or is he just someone that's unbelievable, more of just an entertainer and just knows how to market himself and create this identity that's making him massive amounts of money and creating a celebrity status for him, which I think he obviously has.
Yeah, he is entertaining. He found a way to create a massive spectacle around this event. But when I think of someone who is a professional, you can call him a boxer. He is someone who boxes, but he is not a professional boxer. He is not a professional athlete. The people that have been able to climb those ranks, it takes a lot of hard work, sacrifice, so much dedication and competitiveness to actually get to that level that Jake Paul hasn't exhibited. Like competition is not what got him in the position to hold that fight, but his ability to garner attention, create an audience, market brilliantly, and have a lot of money is what got him to the situation. So he's not a professional boxer at all. He is an entrepreneur and a content creator, and he has found a way to make boxing content while leveraging not bigger names, but notable names in the space. So the first fight I ever saw of his was on the Mike Tyson Roy Jones card when he fought Nate Robinson, who that was a terrible fight for Nate to take because one, Jake Paul is like 6'1", Nate Robinson's like 5'8", 5'9", and Nate was probably like in his mid-30s when that happened. So that was the first fight I saw from Jake Paul. But since then, he has leveraged big-name fighters who are past their prime, would not see another payday at that size ever again. So he leverages, hey, I'm going to fight this person. As opposed to, I think, as he's done this, we've seen that it's not people are tuning in to watch Jake Paul fight because he's such a great fighter, because he's had a bunch of fights with smaller name people that haven't really done numbers like that. But when he leverages the brand of other fighters, it started to get big. And then people got wise to the fact that he was just fighting older guys past their prime fight, like Anderson Silva. I think Anderson Silva was in his 40s. And the hype started to die down. So, like a brilliant marketer, brilliant entrepreneur, he went out and got Mike Tyson to agree to a fight, which good on both of them. Heck of a business move, but it was just a spectacle. And I don't know if he can keep this shtick up for too much longer.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I thought it was brilliant for him to get into boxing. I think that was definitely, in my personal opinion, I feel like it's been overall a dying sport. It has not been as popular, at least in the US. I think in the UK it's a lot more popular than here is in the US. But in the US, I think it's really died down. I think a lot because you didn't really have those big names like you did in the past with Mike Tyson when he was at prime, and it was a good entry point for him coming being a social media influencer and entrepreneur to get into this and create buzz around boxing. Now, if it was a collaborative orchestration of like, hey, Jake Paul is the perfect fit to revive boxing. Why? Because he's got a massive, substantial following, social media influencer. He's the perfect person to hate, right? There's two schools of people that go and watch these fights. It's the people that want to prove to others that he's a legitimate boxer, and there's a second one to see him get knocked out. I think there's probably more people that want to see him get knocked out. That's why the fight lasted as long as they did. I think they intentionally like string that along for 8 rounds and had this whole two-minute interval between 2-minute rounds or whatever it was, like to kind of stray off the traditional boxing path. So that wasn't even like a legitimate boxing fight. Like the structure wasn't the same. So it's just like it's more entertainment. But the guy's brilliant though. Like I looked up some stuff. Like he has just a good way of attracting attention, right? And he creates buzz. He stays newsworthy, right? He's always between him and his brother, they're always newsworthy. So people are gonna watch. Like it was so funny. I was watching on Netflix. There's like stars in the audience. Like they're having this big thing at Jerry World over in Dallas, like of this, and it was a sideshow. Like it's literally a slideshow. I listen. If you're a true boxing enthusiast and boxing fan, please tell me if you really thought that this was boxing. I'd love to hear from you. I really would love to hear from you. Like, tell me, oh, this is legitimate boxing. This is great, and it's entertainment. Like,
Yeah.
it's entertainment. But you know what? Listen, they took bets on it, right? People will bet.
Yeah, and I will say the undercard fights were pretty good, and he found
Right.
a way to bring a lot of eyes to people seeing those fighters that had it been a separate boxing promotion that didn't have Jake Paul and Mike Tyson on, probably wouldn't have seen those fights. So there is a argument to say that he is saving boxing in a way. There hasn't been a major boxing promotion like this in a long time. Because I remember as a kid when my dad would have people over to watch the fights. Like I've seen Mike Tyson fights. I've seen when Antonio Tarver and Lennox Lewis and Zab Judah, like I've seen like all those fighters growing up. So my perception of like real boxing match, and then you see Jake Paul fighting people that are like 10 and 15 plus years older than him. It's like, this isn't boxing. It's entertaining. And he's done a good job of helping promote other boxers through it, which is great. But yeah, I'm after seeing him fight a darn near 60-year-old man, I am about tired of Jake Paul fighting anybody. Unless it's going to be a legit fight. You know who I want to see him fight?
I want to say one thing though. Go ahead. No. I was going to say, like, go ahead, tell me.
Is Whitaker. He's this dude. I think he is from the UK, but he's this guy who was like dodging all types of stuff. He's kind of doing quirky little antics in the ring, but he could fight. I would love to see that dude. I don't know his first name, but Whitaker versus Jake Paul. I would love to see that fight.
They have strategic meetings, I'm sure, and say, listen, this is the next person that we're going to have you fight. And it's going to be who is that going to put him undefeated and continue this train.
Yeah.
You know, until maybe it becomes more of a boxer. I have no idea. But it's just, you know, speaking about it, I think that's one of the things that is so popular. Despite how old Mike Tyson is, there are people out there that felt because they felt like of him on, you know, like with his partner, and he looked like he could run through a wall. But he felt deep down inside, one punch could change this. They were waiting for one punch from Mike Tyson ever would come. And they're like, listen, I know it's the 8th round and he's getting demolished and he's been biting his glove for the last hour and a half. But like, he could throw one punch that can end this, and then my year has been made. You know, that's what some people I think felt, and I think that's what held them onto this. It's like, I know he's 60. It's Mike Tyson. He throws one punch. This thing's over. This thing's over. All my dreams have come true. Screw Jake Paul. Deserves every bit of it. It just never happened. It never was gonna happen. It never was gonna happen. And I think that's how dumb they are too. What would be the benefit for Mike Tyson to win this fight? There's zero benefit. He's not getting back into boxing. This is a one-off for Mike Tyson. This is a money grab. For Jake Paul, it means a lot to win this fight because he gets to continue his undefeated streak. He gets to continue to fight and raise money and start betting platforms and all those different things that he does. Like, there's a bet. So listen, it's like, come on, really? I told my son wanted to watch it. And I'm like, dude, there's no way he's losing this fight. I know who I don't have to watch. All right, let's watch. And Dad's going to prove to you who's right.
Yeah, I think there was definitely an understanding between the two. And I've seen some clips on the internet showing Mike hit Jake pretty good in the first round or two. They clinched. They're alleging that Jake Paul whispered something in his ear. Mike kind of tapped him in the back, saying like, okay, I got it. And then from then on, Mike Tyson was a bit of a stick in the mud. Mike Tyson wasn't as mobile, which He's also 58 and had a knee brace on, which I think that is crazy that he was fighting an old man on a bad knee. But it did seem like Mike started pulling punches. Who knows? But I think there was for sure an agreement between the two that no one was going to get hurt. And how bad it would have looked horrible for Jake Paul if he went out and just knocked Mike Tyson out. That's not a great look. It's better that it goes to decision because that is a horrible look for your brand. That's elder abuse. Like,
I was thinking these words.
yeah.
I was like, it's wrong. It's wrong, but you know what?
Yeah.
Listen, it wasn't going to happen. It was going to happen. It was designed to go as long as it went. I mean, it's just more and more. And I just feel like stupid for the fact that I tuned in, but I did. And maybe that was the goal, to get guys in and watch. And even though the video feed sucked, like it's still like I'm accepting less because of just the possibility of, right? Like, so I don't know. I have less.
They created a
less
spectacle.
Society as I get older. They did. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Say that again. Can you hear me? I'm still live on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the White Tiger Podcast. We will see you next time.